Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's another edition of Let's Talk Broncos. Zach, we have the draft right around the corner. We've spent a lot of time talking about running backs. We spent a lot of time talking about the tight ends. I feel like those are the two positions in this draft everybody's clamoring for. Everybody wants a running back. Everyone wants a tight end. But I always think fans need to be cautious of, hey, I might want this, but the team could be looking at it from a completely different perspective, right? And when I flip it over to the defensive side of the ball, defensive line easily would be one of my first choices of, hey, the Broncos should probably, or Broncos fans should probably be familiar with the defensive linemen in this class, because I could see them take one as early as pick 20 in the second round and beyond. I could see them at any round taking a defensive lineman this year. So I'm excited for this show. But Zach, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. And I actually think that's a great place to kind of set the table on the defensive line as we kind of wing it on this one. But the need is really there. This front just set the franchise record for, most sacks in a season, but they could absolutely use some added bodies to that room, and a first round investment or a second round investment at that, because you have Zach Allen coming up. Now they probably re-sign him or franchise tag him, but you still have that deal coming up at the end of the 2025 season. John Franklin Myers as well is in that bucket, and Malcolm Roach. So that's three of your, I think, top four snap getters on the defensive line outside of DJ Jones. Am I missing someone there, Joey? But three of the top four, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a problem. You need to, one of those guys at least is probably going to walk. You want to replace him. And there's the pre-existing problem of Zach Allen playing more snaps per game than any other defensive lineman in the league this past season. You want to help offload some of that pressure from him onto someone else and get a first round body in there. You're preparing yourself for JFM's probably inevitable departure, and making that defensive line or ensuring that it maintains that dominant play from last year.
Yes. It is. It's a bigger need than people give it credit for. I mean, Zach, I would point to that Buffalo game. Why do you think the Broncos got dominated in that game? Like, we were getting pushed around a little bit. And then as you go further in the season, you're going to need more depth guys. I think run supporters in the middle of this defense are at like a really big high. Looking at your linebacker situation there, I'm rooting for Drake Greenlaw. I love the signing, but again, he is coming off of injury, and then you have Singleton coming off of injury. It's at least up in the air on how that room's going to look this next year. Your edges just aren't very good at run defenses generally. You kind of sacrifice it for the pass rush. That's why they're so good at getting sacks this last year. But on the flip side, not great at run defense. So interior defensive line is a big one. I think it'd help out this defense dramatically, adding another one. I really do. Another good one, at least. Well, let's get straight into it. I first want to hit on some of these comments. Andy says, here before Joey preaches a Darius Alexander agenda. Yes, you will be hearing that today, Andy. And everyone, please make sure you're following Andy on Twitter. It's Andy2Ys NFL. He does great NFL draft stuff. I love his page, and also Colorado Buff stuff. So make sure you guys are checking that out. We have Hammer. What up, Liam? Here before I preach at all. And then we got Paul. We got D Bronx. Shout out to D Bronx. He says he'd rather have a nose this year. I could see it. And then Paul, Nolan's character issues hasn't died down. No, Nolan, I can tell you, just like covering CU a little bit this year, I've said it on this podcast before. You just hear things, and I know Walter Nolan, this character stuff has been an issue for a while. This isn't new or something that people even covering college football last year weren't saying when he was in the portal. But Zach, let's get straight into it. I think what we're going to do is hit on like 7 defensive linemen probably on this. We're going to start off at the top. I think the first one the Broncos aren't going to have a chance on. So we'll little talk about him. I'm more interested past that, though. Mason Graham, Zach, University of Michigan. First thing that stood out to me was, like, I can definitely tell when you read his background, like, this guy was a wrestler. He knows leverage. He knows natural leverage, which is huge on the defensive line. You need to know where you're putting your body, how that's affecting the offensive lineman, things like that. And then also just like balance, affecting his balance. He's really good in these type of areas. I think it's pretty clear cut. He's the best defensive lineman in this class. I don't think there's really a big argument from anyone else here. As far as, I don't think I would feel comfortable taking anyone else in the top 12 or so. And I think Mason Graham, I would feel comfortable taking in that. Zach, do you have any thoughts on Graham?
To me, I don't think the gap is as big. I think he deserves that number 1 spot, but I don't think the gap between him and, Derrick Harmon or Kenneth Grant, whoever you want to have in that number 2 spot, or Nolan, whatever your flavor, I just don't think the gap there is that big, because I think there's a lot of questions with Mason Graham, and just, I guess, his athletic upside for one, but I think even the floor to an extent, shorter arm length than typical. I don't know what it was at the pro day, but I'm pretty sure it was 32 at the combine, which, to be fair, is some funny measuring, because they screwed up everyone's arm length this year at the combine, which is really unfortunate for this draft cycle as we talk about these guys. But I do think it was a concern even based on last year's summer numbers. So that's a concern with Graham coming into it. And yeah, I think he's a really good player. He comes in with a high floor. He's incredibly stout against the run. He's great at just anchoring and holding his ground, even, against double teams. And I think he can be explosive against the pass game too. He's good at penetrating.
Really good movement skills there for him. Like, that's something that stood out to me.
I just think he's not like a premier athlete. I think if you look at, past elite prospects at the position, most of them had more than him coming out.
Yeah, I think that's important to note too, Zach. I don't think this is a Quinnen Williams-esque talent coming out of the draft. I don't think that at all. I think a large product, and we're going to talk about this a lot. I even heard Dane Brugler talking about this on a podcast a while ago. It was more of the start of the whole process here. A lot of the talk is going to be, but in this draft class, right? Yes. There's just not a ton of Quinnen Williams-esque prospects generally. There's not a ton of blue chippers in this class, which is why you're going to pick your favorites of guys past that. And I think Mason Graham, it does fall in the past. I wouldn't consider him a blue chip talent. Like Quinnen Williams was a blue chip talent. Some of these other defensive tackles that have come out in the past. I don't think Mason Graham's that, but I do think he's a damn good player in this draft class.
His comp for ESPN's comp for him at least is Christian Wilkins, which I think gives you the idea of, he just went to the Raiders, signed a big contract. And I don't even know because I think the measurables are pretty different there, but in terms of, I think that's the level of player, at least we're talking about. He signs with the Raiders for a ridiculous deal. He's in that, top 10-ish range of guys at the position, but he's not one of the elite guys on the interior.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think we need to touch too much on Mason Graham there. I just don't think the Broncos have a chance to grab him. I expect him off the board probably like in the top 10. Okay, so I'm going to go off of my list here of the guys that I have ranked, Zach, and then you kind of can just agree or disagree with me, and we can discuss on the later ones if you think I have it screwed up, right? So we both have Mason Graham as our best interior defensive lineman this year. For me, my number 2 is Derrick Harmon from Oregon. This is a guy that, Zach, I just think is rock solid. Like right when he steps in the league, I think he's a rock solid player. I see him take on double teams really well. He can 2-gap. He can dominate you in the one-on-one situations. He has really long arms. And when he has his pad level down, because that is something, but it's always going to be an issue for these guys that are like 6'5". Like it's just, this is naturally his body. You're going to want him to bend lower, but sometimes it's hard for these guys. But when he has his arms out and he's able to lock out on some of these guys, best of luck. He's one of those type of defensive linemen. The biggest critique on him for me is, and I think it's everyone's biggest critique on him, but it stood out when you watch the film, is, okay, he's not finishing the play like you want. He's not the one. He's causing the pressure. He's in the backfield, but he's having a hard time locating the football and making the tackle. And a lot of that is just he doesn't have the agility, the side-to-side agility. He's kind of tight in his hips. He can't switch and turn. So when a quarterback's stepping up in the pocket, it might be an Olay situation. He might run right past him, right? He doesn't have the reactionary athleticism to go back and make that play. Here's my whole thing with that. I don't think that pushes him down my board because, man, there are a lot of players that can finish a play. There's not many players that are actually creating the pressure for the guy to finish the play. I think you can be a bad football player and get a sack a lot of times just by being the quarterback runs into the sack. There's tons of other things. The actual talented player is causing the quarterback to step up in that sack. That's the skill set I'm looking for. Of course, I would love for him to make the big play, but is that the thing that, like, I don't know, like the high sack, low pressure guy is never really, that's always the overrated player to me. The really good player is the guy that's consistently getting those pressures. That's kind of Derrick Harmon for me. I think he comes in rock solid. A lot of people are saying I would coach him up to become better in those situations. I don't know if you can. I think a lot of it is just his athletic skill set and limitations there. But I don't think I really care. Like, I would still take him if he's causing pressure, if he's causing havoc in the backfield. That's good for me.
Yeah, and I think it's a problem if he is your only guy, or a bigger problem if he's your only guy on the defensive line and you need him to be the one making plays in the backfield for you and being that, I don't know, starring force. You need him to be that presence that's creating the splash plays for you because you're not getting them from elsewhere. The Broncos aren't in that position. They're in position where they can add a guy like Harmon who's, you know, a B-, B+ in seemingly everything outside of that one ability. Though, again, I do think the finishing concern is real. But, you know, you can take a guy like that who just provides a much more well-rounded high floor and, you know, again, immediately plug him into that rotation where you're taking snaps off of Zach Allen's plate, maybe even DJ Jones's plate as he gets older, because this is a guy who can play on early downs and help you against the run. I think he is a really, really strong run defender. I was about to maybe get a little too rich because there's a lot of good run defenders, I think, at the top of this class, but he, I think from day one, is a plus defensive lineman on early downs and on late downs as a pass rusher. He gets into the backfield very frequently, even if he's not finishing those plays. Getting that interior pressure and moving the quarterback off his spot, that's going to negatively impact the play far more times than not. I'm a big fan of the player. One thing I'd add that I don't think you hit on, a knock outside of the flexibility and the finishing that I've heard brought up with him is limited upside. And I don't know if I really see limited, just kind of this idea that, yeah, he's a B+ and everything, but he's not going to have, he's probably never going to be a superstar. I see him kind of talked about the same way I see like Emeka Egbuka talked about at receiver. And I just question that. I think you see, even during like the position drills at the combine, he is moving very well there. You know, even if he does have that tightness where he's struggling to finish plays, and he is built very, very impressively, I think, which is, it was surprising to me when I was reading through Brugler's The Beast, which came out this past week, that one of his knocks on Derrick Harmon was that scouts think there still might be a little bit of bad weight on him, and he could maybe, you know, stand to be even more toned and even more built, because he is a built athlete. And I think as good as he is now, he could get a lot better.
Yeah. I just want to hit on this again, Zach. It's just like the finishing stuff. Like, man, just because there's not a stat for it, doesn't make that play isn't valuable. If he's able to be the reason the running back has to move out of the gap, has to make the cut in so another player can tackle him for a loss. The reason that running back was still tackled for a loss was because of Derrick Harmon on that play, right? All of this is extremely valuable. And what it's doing is it's helping the other players look better on the team. It's one of those type of guys. I know Chris Sims he has a list of the fuck the play up guys. Derrick Harmon would be one of those. Maybe he isn't having the sacks, maybe he isn't having all the TFLs, but has a lot of, Derrick Harmon is the reason that play didn't work. So yeah, and I think this is a great point too. D-Brock says, how many D tackles finish rack up sacks? It's a primary pressure position. Yeah, absolutely. It is. I think for him, it is a little bit more of an issue than your average defensive lineman. Like, I just think he gets moving so fast upfield, and he's so leggy. He's a leggy athlete. He has a hard time redirecting himself. It's not he isn't fast because he is kind of pretty fast for his size. It's not, he doesn't have a quick jump. He has a very quick jump. It's redirecting himself. He's a vertical athlete. And I think that's why he kind of has a hard time making these big plays in the backfield. Okay, so for me, number 3, Zach, is Kenneth Grant. I know this is a guy you love. You talked about him here on our last show, Zach, and you actually ranked Harmon below Kenneth Grant. Do you stand by that statement?
Yes, I do. And I think for me, it's, I don't know, in a vacuum, I might take Harmon a hair above Grant just because, and it's something we've been talking about, just because he's an easier projection. He is a B plus in damn near everything. So I think the bust potential for Harmon is pretty low. Maybe he doesn't live up quite to what we're expecting from or quite to being a first round pick, but I think he can be at worst a valuable rotational player on the defensive line for you. I think he's, especially relative to the rest of this draft class, pretty dang safe. For the Broncos specifically, though, I think you have that desire for maybe a true nose tackle, as D Bronx was talking about. And I don't think that's where you play him all the time, Kenneth Grant, that is. But I think he has the ability to kick in there because he's just so massive. And he's really a freaky athlete, too. He was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list for the 2024 season, and it shows on his tape. Guys his size don't move like him. I think he's in a different tier than Derrick Harmon in that regard. And that's not a knock on Harmon. Like I just said, I think Harmon's a very, very good athlete. Kenneth Grant is a special athlete. Yeah, his combination of height, weight, speed is just rare. Maybe not rare, but pretty unusual. And then when it does all come together, you see him dominate plays and take over snaps in a way that I don't think Derrick Harmon does quite. I think Derrick Harmon at his best is a really, really good player, whereas Kenneth Grant, I think, can single-handedly blow up offenses and has that all-pro upside. A guy I think he could end up being, if he realizes his potential, is what we've seen Dexter Lawrence be in New York, kind of that big-bodied run stuffing presence that also gets incredible interior pressure and can overwhelm some of the smaller or shorter armed guys on the interior. I think he fits perfectly for that. I think he's got versatility to play really anywhere from 3. Maybe you could do 4-eye, but probably not. I don't think that's what you want to do.
1 and then 3 too.
Yeah, I think you can go. You play them between 1 and 3, and I think that's good versatility that helps with what the Broncos want to do right now. Maybe he's not that true nose, but can help provide some of that early run stuffing presence, and you don't have to take him off the field on late downs. I think maybe on 3rd down, that's when you kick him inside to that more one tech spot and know, hey, he's still going to keep us sound against the run, but he can make the quarterback uncomfortable in this spot too.
Yeah, I think he's a really talented football player, Zach. I don't think there's any question. I think Harmon and Grant are kind of hard to even compare because they're not really playing the same position to me. Like, I think Grant is much more of a 1 tech to Harmon being a 3 tech or even 4-eye primarily. Yeah, that's kind of how I look at these two players. And then Grant can play 3 tech, but I think I like him at 1 tech. Like, that's why I'm drafting him. And then he, like everything you said, I think he's a fantastic athlete for his size and things like that. I think he's extremely explosive. I think he's hard to move in the run game. Like, he's one of those guys that's going to tie up blockers and make it really difficult for those guys to get up to the second level. He's just an all-around really solid football player. I guess my one biggest issue with him, Zach, was I felt like when I was watching Michigan, and I could even say this. Well, I couldn't say the same for Mason Grant, but I could say the same for a lot of Michigan football players that I've watched. Is it just felt like some games. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the game off the top of my head. Was it USC? Or no, it was Ohio State. It was the Ohio State tape. If you guys go and watch back the Ohio State tape, Kenneth Grant was absolutely dominant. And then I go back and I watch other tapes, and I'm like, okay, so he's just kind of running hot and cold to me. Like, I don't know exactly what football player I'm getting game to game in these different tapes I'm watching. I think he's always pretty solid, but I see dominance. I see the reason why he would be my number 2 defensive lineman in this class in the Ohio State game. And then in other games, I'm like, okay, I don't see the level of dominance I'm looking for. I'm not seeing, I'm seeing a lot of potential, but I'm not seeing the dominance, on-field production dominance. That's kind of my biggest issue with him right now, along with he just needs to develop more as a pass rusher. I don't know if he's ever going to be like a dominant pass rusher, but I think he can really be one of those guys that makes it difficult for a quarterback to step up in the pocket because he has a really quick jump. And once he gets under you, once he learns his leveraging a little more, he could pile drive that guy. He could really pile drive an offensive lineman, especially centers in today's NFL. These guys are walking around like 280 pounds soaking wet out here. Like the Kenneth Grants of the world, they eat those guys for lunch. So, I think Kenneth Grant is a really good football player. I just have Harmon above him just because I think Harmon steps on the field this next year as a better football player. I think he's more versatile, and I think I could even play Harmon at the 5 tech sometimes. I think I can move him from 5 to 1 in scenarios. They moved him everywhere across that line. And then, like I said, I think it's just hard to compare these players, honestly, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think all those points are fair. I guess for me, I still lean Grant just because I think when you see it put all together, like that Ohio State game, I think is a great example. He looks like he's worthy of a top 10 pick. But there is more that I think needs to be put together there. And one thing we were talking about, we haven't seen, I think, either good or bad, how this defensive line staff is at developing these players. Like we feel confident about Street's ability because look at what he's gotten out of Quinn Miners, or even, some newer draft picks like Paucheski coming in and being a great contributor, as a second-year undrafted player. You feel confident maybe taking that type of swing with him. Are the defensive line coaches good enough to do that? It's not a situation like Nate Hackett or something, I don't know, where we've seen them be objectively bad at the job. But there's not a lot that I think enforces that confidence either.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay, so I was texting you this privately, Zach. If I were the 49ers right now, I'd probably have these 2 flipped. Just because the 49ers have such a history of developing these guys and making them amazing. Like, I think when it makes it a lot easier being a Broncos guy than I don't know how these Daniel Jeremiahs and Dane Bruglers and Zerlines even are able to scout players, because how do you know what scheme to scout for? Like, I'm sitting there watching these guys specifically for the Broncos and how they fit the Broncos and what their situations. Like, it's hard for me because my projection from Kenneth Grant going to the Broncos versus 49ers changes. Like, it would change just because I think that group has a better track history on developing linemen. I don't know how these national dudes are able to do it.
Now, really quick, we did our tier list last week, right? And this was before you had dived in on all the defensive line prospects. You said as much on that episode. At that time, because we were leaning on my opinion and I had the 2 slightly different, Harmon wound up in B, Kenneth Grant wound up in A. If we were to run it back with that same tier list, I actually think I have it if I could share it.
I would have flipped it.
You'd have, but do you think Harmon is worthy of an A? So that they're not both in B, you'd put Harmon in A.
I put Harmon in A and I put Grant in B. Probably I'd flip those 2. I think Grant was in A and then Harmon was in B, if I remember right, on our tier list, Zach.
That sounds right. I've actually got it right there if it's popping up. Yeah. So we had Genty as the lone S, and then Kenneth Grant and Derrick Harmon in B. But flipping those 2, I think, would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, flip. That's my personal take. I understand if people disagree with me on that, though. All right, so moving on. I have Darius Alexander next. This is my guy right now.
You are bold on this one, man, and I respect it. I respect it, but this is
why is it so bold? I mean, I don't understand. Are people watching different film than I'm watching out here? I mean, I'm watching Darius Alexander from Toledo. Toledo, yes, I get it. Toledo. People are going to talk about. I'm not interested in your helmet scouting, though. I'm not interested in it. I don't care about it. Keep all that in a different place. But hey, you know what? I went into it not expecting much either. It's not like I had the bias towards the Darius Alexander. I just came away from the film and I said, this is a damn good football player. This is a guy that is really, really disruptive for them. And I mean, he played Texas A&M, and it was Mississippi State. Sorry, same color. It was Mississippi State. Had a really great performance against Mississippi State. And I was sitting there like, who the hell is this? Start doing my little Google, start researching. And then I found out, okay, as a rookie, he's going to be 25. That's why everyone hates him. To me, if this was, Zach, this would not be nearly, just knowing how the scouting community works, this would not be a ludicrous take if he was 23 instead of 25. Darius Alexander, they're just writing him off because of the age. I think that's part of it, is we are moving him down. We're looking at Darius Alexander as a second-round pick, most of a draft community, being 2-3 years older than the average draft prospect. That's telling about what we're seeing on film here. This guy has a very quick step off the football. He has all the length in the world. He's good at taking double teams. He can two gap. He can one gap. He can get upfield fast and get in your quarterback's face. And then when he wants, I don't advise any defensive lineman, young defensive lineman, if you're listening, not a great idea to run through people's chests. But Darius Alexander can do that too. He can just strictly go through you because he has a lot of force and power. I think Darius Alexander is a damn good football player, Zach. And I don't know if people are going to think I'm crazy for saying it, but this is an easy first round pick for me if it isn't the age. And I probably even have him his film to me battles all of these guys. Now I have to sit there and I have to debate I have to sit there and like do more research on why is he 25? What happened to the point where he is over 4 years in college and still in college? I have to do my Googles there. I have to figure out his background. But I'm the film guy. I watched the film and that's what I saw. Darius Alexander is a damn good player.
Yeah, I agree. I'm confused. I was trying to pull up his background really quick to see why didn't he come out last year? He actually had more sacks in 2023 than he did in 2024. I highlighted D-Bronk's comment here because it captures some of my concerns. He's dominating, or he's having these great last 2 years, 24 and a half years old. He's more than 3 years older than Kenneth Grant. It's like 3 years and a couple of months older than Kenneth Grant. So, both these guys, I think, don't have the most they don't have a great rush plan right now. They're kind of throwing stuff at the wall. Not to say he doesn't have moves, but I don't think he's figured out like the sequencing or anything yet. I'm okay with that when I'm talking about a guy who's 21. When I'm talking about a guy who's 24, I'm a little, or 25 even as a rookie. That's a little more concerning for me because he's played a lot more football. He's played almost 2 more seasons than Kenneth Grant. He played 6 whole seasons in college. Why last year was he not going into the draft, or at the very least to a bigger program than Toledo with NIL money being the way it is? Why wasn't he taking the leap? And like you said, I need to be doing more research on that. But those are red flags to me with these older prospects. It's different when you have a Devon Villay at a traits-heavy position as an older prospect. That's very concerning. Okay, well, why is he an older prospect? Well, he went on a mission trip and he started college way later than the average person. That's one thing. Darius Alexander was on the normal path and had to use his extra year of COVID eligibility to even be in this conversation right now. That's concerning for me. And again, the great reps are really great. I think
I didn't see as much I think, bad. I did not.
I think a little closer to Grant in terms of there's
no. I don't even think it's close. I think Darius Alexander, as far as a pass rusher and the moves he does, I don't think he's any worse than any of the guys that we mentioned. I just think he's older. I think Kenneth Grant has a very limited skill set as far as a pass rusher compared to Alexander.
Okay, but here's the thing. Alexander has half a sack more against dramatically worse competition as a player with 3 more years of coaching and development under his belt.
Sacks isn't the thing that I would feel comfortable ever going by.
I'll see if I can find the pressure numbers. But I don't think he was that much more. And I don't think like you're drafting Kenneth Grant for his pass rush either. I where I would differ from you is I think he's further off. And that concerns me when we're talking about a 25-year-old rookie. I want him to. Derrick Harmon, I'd be cool with it.
What was that?
If he was Derrick Harmon, it'd be less of an issue for me. I don't think he's.
I think he's closer to that. I think Kenneth Grant is raw a lot more. I think he's more raw than Darius Alexander. To be clear, I don't think Kenneth Grant, and I think that should be the case with Darius Alexander being 25. And I think that's even the reason why he's in the conversation of these guys. Like, it feels like he's in the majority of everybody's top 5 or 6. Like, that's the only reason why. Is if he was super raw as a 25-year-old, he would not be in this conversation. Oh, no. I think Darius Alexander, like, yes, he does. He's not a perfect player. I'm not sitting there saying he has everything under the world. Like, I think his pads can get high sometimes. Again, he's a tall athlete. That happens with these taller defensive linemen. I do think this is a really good football player, though. I came away thoroughly impressed. I saw a lot more of the Kenneth Grant during I think it was the second quarter or third quarter of Ohio State game. Maybe it was both of them, second and third quarter, the Ohio State game. I saw that version, and I was against lower competition. It absolutely was. The Toledo's not playing the same teams as Michigan is. But I saw a lot more level of that play than I did with and I don't like Grant. I have him ranked above Alexander, but I saw that level of dominance more in Alexander's tape than I did Grant. I might be talking crazy to people. I watched it, and
I think he took over more. I would agree he maybe took over at a higher frequency, but he's going up against MAC guys. Now, talking out of both sides of my mouth here, he had a really great Senior Bowl. He was one of the biggest winners from the Senior Bowl. Yeah. And there you're going up against, your fellow draft prospects. There were some good linemen down there in Mobile. I'd be curious to pick Jacob and Frankie's mind about. Jacob's actually in the chat. I didn't realize. Jacob, what did you think about him at Senior Bowl?
Yeah, Jacob, if you can type that in here, that'd be cool. I've been talking to Jacob a lot about Darius Alexander and the DMs. He also says talent-wise, he deserves to go higher than second round.
The other concern with the age we didn't hit on that he's mentioning in the comments that we should, him being a 25-year-old rookie, when he comes up for that next deal, you are paying him for it's 29 through like 31, 32-year-old seasons. You're not going to want him on a third contract. Kenneth Grant, you're going to have no problem with that. That's different at quarterback. At quarterback, that's not really part of the age discussion for me. But if we're talking wide receiver, if we're talking about defensive tackle, I do think that's a piece.
Another thing I wanted to mention about this, I just thought it was interesting. I think for the majority of the teams, the 25-year-old part is a big that kind of sucks. I do think there are some teams though, Zach. Like let's talk about throw this in a hypothetical, right? Zach, you are that New Orleans Saints team with Drew Brees, and you're in a small window. I think being able to get a second round pick or wherever Darius Alexander falls and him be more pro ready than the rest of the guys on the board because of his age and the more experience, that could be appealing for a team like that in a small window. Just saying, hey, I want the best football player right now. Who is that? It's Darius Alexander. Screw the age. We're in a small window anyways. You know what I mean? So there are I don't know how many teams there are like that in the NFL right now, but it's something that I was thinking about a little bit.
Looking up stats on these guys, little detail for Derrick Harmon we didn't talk about. He led the draft class in pressure
he did
with 55, and by a wide margin too. He had 50% more pressures than Darius Alexander at 37. And Alexander finished 6th. I was wrong on his pressure numbers. They're there at 6. He had 10 more than Kenneth Grant. But he's at 37. That ranks 6th in this year's draft class. Really, in terms of these top prospects we'll be talking about today, he's 2nd. Walter Nolan's right behind him at 35. Then you get Mason Graham at 34. But Derrick Harmon at 55 really stands out.
Where did Grant finish on that list, just out of curiosity?
He's at 27.
Okay.
It's hard because a lot of these guys are like, it's their draft year, but I wouldn't consider them part of the draft class.
I also don't think that Kenneth Grant. I don't think you're drafting Kenneth Grant for his pressure numbers.
No, I think it's gravy. It's the cherry on top, and I think there could be a lot there. I really do, but he is 5th among this group, among these guys we talk about in the 1st and 2nd round. I guess you could maybe throw TJ Sanders in there, in which case he'd be 6th. He had as many as Omar Norman Lott, which I think is notable because Omar Norman Lott is
Mr. Like pass rush,
a pass rush specialist on the interior. So he was still productive there. We're talking about a lot of really good players here, but credit to Alexander. I wouldn't love it at 51, but I could get behind it. He's one of the 50 best players in this draft. Probably right now. I don't know.
Right now, if you were just grading guys off their rookie season,
probably
name the best players in this class. I'm not projecting. I'm not worrying about contracts. Darius Alexander is my top 20. I don't like that. Like the age, stuff like that.
50, you have me sold on.
I think the 3 years, Zach. I think most people would have him there because he's 3 years older than these guys. Yet they still have him going in the 2nd round. That's telling about what they're seeing on tape. What?
At the bottom of it, though, I'd say like a guy like Tyleik Williams, who's not super young, is 21 spots ahead of him on the Beast. I should pull up the consensus big board, but I do think he's more of like a second half of the 2nd round guy is how he's largely viewed, and I think a lot of that's age. To your point,
yeah,
I don't think it's all age.
I don't think it's all, but I think a lot of it is he's old, man. And how do we make that make sense? We really have to pull this guy in our draft room. Why are you a 6-year senior, dude? Like it even goes into your character evaluation to see if he fits your football program, like all of that type of stuff. Jacob says, to your question, Zach, he was dominant at the Senior Bowl and had good reps lined up all across the line from nose tackle to edge. He had a pick 6 in one of the games I was watching. I think it was in the bowl game. It did a half hurdle over a guy running to the end zone. Freaky athlete there, Darius Alexander. Moving on, I have Walter Nolan, Zach. Where do you think that is ranked for you? So I have Darius Alexander, then Walter Nolan. Would you have Walter Nolan above Darius Alexander?
Sorry, I had myself muted. Yes, I would. I would have him over Darius Alexander personally. Both these guys are gambles. I think I feel a little better about the Walter Nolan gamble. I was listening to the Athletics interior defensive line preview for this upcoming draft, and they brought up a point with Nolan that I thought was a good one. We've talked a lot about how the concern with him is kind of the rumblings from the Texas A&M coaching staff and them being unhappy with his work ethic or his commitment to the team or blah, 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 blah. That's something they have said very consistently with all of the guys who decided to leave for more NIL money. And now maybe there was an element of like, hey, these are the guys we're comfortable letting go because of reasons XYZ. And that's why there is the common thread there. But hearing that point from Dane Brugler, I was like, that's a good point. Maybe these are just coaches with sour grapes. Because per him, the whole miss coaches, while there are still some of those concerns or bubblings, they're much more positive and don't view it as nearly the problem that the A&M coaches did. And once you get over those character hurdles, which I do think are real, we're talking about a guy who coming out of high school was number 2 in his class only to Travis Hunter, which is one of the most amazing college football athletes we've seen in ever. So that's a testament to the type of, I think, ball of clay you're working with. He's an amazing athlete. And when you see it come together, it's really, really special. He can take over run plays. I think his ability to close is really, really strong. I think that's maybe his best trait is his ability to finish plays. We talked about that being the hang up with Derrick Harmon. Walter Nolan, I think, has great closing speed, a great ability to shoot gaps and just, end the play right
work
then.
laterally.
Yes.
Laterally.
Jump laterally to fly into a gap and blow it up. When it all comes together for him, it is really, really something to watch. I think if you watched his highlight reel, like his Just Bomb Productions or whatever it's called, I think you'd be like, this guy's worthy of a top 10 pick. I don't think he's ultimately that, because it's inconsistent and because he has the character red flags. But if you felt good about it, interviewing with his A&M coaches or his Ole Miss coaches and everything, that'd be a gamble I'd be willing to take. I think he is a very, very special talent. And he's, for whatever it's worth, he's another guy who's 3 years younger than Darius Alexander. So this is where he is right now. Where do I think he might be in 3 years?
I think Walter Nolan, like you said, Zach, is an exceptional talent. I think he is. Sometimes he is absolutely, like, some reps he has are just like straight dominance. Like, I think more than just straight power, what it is it's that quick jump off the ball leading to power. That's what it is. He gets his momentum going forward so fast, where, I mean, it's rare that if it's a single blocker, like, he a lot of times has that guy 2 yards in the backfield. Now, here's my issue. You mentioned the concerns. You mentioned reasons why I shouldn't be concerned. Let me tell you why I would be with the character stuff. Because I sit there and watch him. They're saying, the rumors are, okay, man, he doesn't really want to learn, blah, blah, blah. Then when I turn on the tape, I'm seeing a guy that doesn't know what the hell he's doing a lot of the time. So it makes sense. Like, okay, now I'm starting to create the story in my head of how this has gone. Why are you so raw? Why is that the situation? Why is it that, like, I'm seeing you in things that like have a hard time read blocks, like, consistently, and I think for the majority of the time I have a problem with how it feels like he's guessing which gap he needs to play, and stuff like that. Like, there's things that you're taught as a defensive lineman where, okay, if I'm getting reach block, I need to beat him to the reach block. My helmet needs to be on that side of the offensive lineman's helmet. I'm trying to beat him to that spot. Walter Nolan a lot of the time gets his face crossed. It's like, man, you are too good of an athlete for that ever to be a thing unless you just don't know what you're doing. And it just happens too consistently. Or there's ways that you're supposed to play when you're getting trapped on the interior. How do I play that? If you're not being blocked as a defensive lineman, there's a reason why every single time. Walter Nolan, it feels like, has a hard time realizing that. Oh, I'm unblocked. I'm running straight up the field. It's a 40-yard dash up the field. He falls
for the trap every time.
Yes, he just has problem reading these gaps, and I'm starting to create the storyline in my head. I'm hearing the rumors about how he is hard to coach, and then I'm seeing a player on the field where his talent is obvious, but I'm having a really hard time understanding why he doesn't know what he's doing, and it just starts to click and make sense in your head. So I think that's why I have him lower on my list, but I still do have him high, because I'm not going to sit there and pretend like my whole little story right there is a fact. I'm not going to sit there and do that because I don't know. But yeah, I think Walter Nolan's a really good football player. I think he's really talented. I don't think he's a really good football player yet. I think he can become a really good football player.
He has the makings of a great football player. Even, like, he could be an all-pro. That wouldn't surprise me if down the line he became an all-pro. It's, an upper, that's like a 90th percentile outcome for him, but he has that on the table for him because he is such a remarkable talent. Like, his ceiling, I think, is a good bit higher than Mason Graham's. Mason Graham's floor is, Empire State Building's difference.
Zach, do you remember Robert Kimdichie from Ole Miss?
Man, so this is part of my Walter Nolan trauma. I was like I was actually telling my girlfriend about Robert Kimdichie recently because of the falling out the window thing. But yeah, he was a guy I was a huge fan of coming out. He was one of my just favorite prospects in that draft. I really wanted the Broncos to get him that interior pass rush presence. Freak athlete, another guy who was really highly thought of coming out of high school. I think he was a top 5-ish prospect in his respective class.
He was, yeah.
had the knucklehead stuff in college, and it never even came close to coming together for him in the pros. Another Ole Miss Rebel too. So yeah, that was going through my head frequently, Joey.
It's just funny. It's kind of like, I know you're not supposed to do it, but it is. It's kind of like a mirror situation. Robert Nkemdiche, that dude looked like he had about 1% body fat on him, and he was like 298 pounds. That guy was a freaking freak. And I wanted the Broncos to draft him so bad. And he did. He flashed crazy stuff. It just never came all together, like you mentioned.
Your mirror thing is extra accurate because Nolan wears number 2 and Nkemdiche wore number 5. So it literally is like a mirror image of the other.
That's funny. All right. So next for me, this one might shock people a little bit. I have Alfred Collins, Texas. I think one thing, I was talking with Jacob about this in the DMs a little bit. One thing that I'm having a really hard time getting over with defensive linemen nowadays is you need to have that length. I need to see you have the long arms to be able to bench press these guys and control the gap. It's hard to live in the NFL without that. These O-linemen are too strong, Zach, to where when they get you right here, you're done. I see it. You are cooked if one of these guys gets you right in there. Like, you're done. And I need you to have that arm length to be able to bench press a guy and keep their hands off of you. That's something Alfred Collins offers. I think he's strong as an ox, that guy. He really is. He doesn't get pushed out of his gap very often at all. When I first watched him, I didn't think he was the greatest athlete. I do think he's actually a pretty good athlete after continuously watching him more and more. I think the biggest thing with him is putting it all together. Can I develop this guy? Am I putting him into a good program where he can continue to work on his pass rush? Can he continue to work on his run defense? And it's not anything to do with the physicals. It's more of just the technique and how he's playing the position. Teachable traits, I think, is Alfred Collins' biggest thing right now. Really good football player, though. I'm saying that about all these guys, but it's true. I mean, they're all in my top 6 defensive linemen. But Alfred Collins is, I like him.
Yeah, I like Alfred Collins too. Another guy where I might even have him a smidge ahead of Darius Alexander. Those guys are pretty close next to each other.
Oh my God, Zach! This crazy. This guy, Darius Alexander, runs circles around this guy on film. It's not even close.
I guess I disagree. I think the best moments of Darius Alexander, I'd agree with you. I don't think he's as consistent as you do. I think that's where we
need to watch the Mississippi State game together. I want to do it with you. I'm inviting you over to the house.
All right, I'm down. Maybe I'll get Darius Alexander pilled, but I'm personally not the biggest fan. Collins is a guy who I think can come in. He's like a poor man's version of Derrick Harmon in this class. I think he no debunks is saying he has nothing as a pass rusher. I think there's maybe a little something in there, just because I do like how he can move laterally. I do think he's got the problem with him is he cannot get low. We talked about all these guys are taller defensive linemen and they can struggle to get their pad level down. That's a real problem with Alfred Collins for me. I think
this would be fun
a lot. That would be fun. Yeah, full field read.
We should do that together, honestly. That'd be fun.
Oh, also, by the way, I like the Rockies hat. I haven't seen that one before. Totally lost my train of thought, but I think he's good. I think you're getting a great run defender from day one. He's plug and play to me, like you're getting a valuable part of a defensive line rotation. Kind of like we were talking about Harmon, except he's just not that level of talent. There's a reason Alfred Collins is going to go probably between like 50 and 70. And or like 40 and 70, and Derrick Harmon's not going to make it past 25. But yeah, I think he's just that same. I don't think his ceiling is very high. He's another guy who's been in college a long time. He was at Texas for 5 years. But I think you can just drop him into your defense and feel really good about him being, like the 3rd, 4th guy on your rotation from day one.
I think there's a lot of coachable things there for him that he needs to get better on. I also think like he has some moments as a pass rusher. I think Jacob said it though. He has a super slow get off, and that's why I was questioning the athlete he was when I was looking at him. I see some of these guys like Harmon's get off is really crazy. Darius Alexander's get off is really crazy. Nolan's get off really crazy. I watch Alfred Collins and it's not that crazy. And it can improve. Like I think this is a coachable trait for him because the more I watched him, I was like, okay, he's a better athlete than I initially gave him credit. I think the biggest thing for him and the thing I like the most is just the length. Something they don't really tell you a lot is that it helps you in double teams too, especially when you're recovering. A lot of the time you're attacking one man, right? On the defensive line, you're going for one of the guys that double team. What was that?
Did you say the length?
Yeah, his arm length.
Are you saying it as a negative or a positive?
Positive.
Oh, okay, good. I was like, he's super. Sorry, my bad. Keep going, Joey.
No, all good. But like super positive. I was just saying one thing they don't really tell you about and how it helps you is in those double team situations, you're a lot of the time as the defensive line attacking one man. And that other guy's coming to chip you and work up field, right? If I can get chipped, but I'm still controlling my gap and I can recover because of my arms and I'm right back in the hole, that is a big asset for me. And the smaller guys can do stuff too, just being fire plugs, getting low. You see that knee drop technique from some of these guys. We're going to talk about a guy next who does that. But I like Alfred Collins' traits, I would say.
Yeah, that I think he's got fairly. He does not jump off the snap well, but I think he's got fairly light feet, bit of a dancing bear. And I think you pair that with his length, and that's why you're getting a really, really nice run defender out of the box from day one.
Yep. Let's go.
And
okay.
a reliable tackler for what it's worth.
Yes. Next, I have, and this is someone that I'm lower on than the consensus. Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. I just talked so much to you guys about how important that arm length is to me, and this is where Tyleik Williams falls down my board. I think Tyleik Williams is a really good run defender in the NFL. I think he's a fire plug. I have problems with him a little bit in double teams, so I'm not putting him at the one. I don't think he's a one technique. I think this is a run stuffing 3 tech on my defense, which is why he falls down. I'm looking for more from my 3 tech at getting upfield. Getting after the passer. Where's the explosive plays coming from? What's happening there? And I think that's where Tyleik Williams falls right there. I just don't see that. Still, this is a guy that if you're projecting in a rotation is going to be a solid football player. I'd love Tyleik Williams in a rotation. I just like all of these other guys upside more, like quite a bit for me. And then I think you can play Tyleik Williams at the nose. Like, here's an example of a guy with not a lot of length, but is a damn good run support guy is DJ Jones on the Broncos. Can he turn into that? I just think that's a harder projection to me than if a Alfred Collins can with his tools and intangibles there that Tyleik Williams doesn't have.
Yeah, I think he's got a really high football IQ. I think he's good. We talked about, how much Walter Nolan can struggle with reading plays out. And Tyleik Williams is on the opposite end of the spectrum. I think he sees the game really naturally. That's something I like about him. And he's another guy where I think he's plug and play, early down contributor. We talked about how the Buffalo Bills bullied the Broncos up front. And I agree with Joey. Maybe you don't want him living at the nose, but you plug this guy in as your 3 technique and, you're going to be holding up a lot better against those physical run games that want to come
helping your linebackers. He's doing a lot of that type of stuff.
Yes. And, I think there's even some pass rush there at times. Actually, what am I talking about? No, there's not. But you're drafting this guy really for what he's doing on the first 2 downs. I think that's one of the big concerns. Arm length, you hit on that point. 32 inches at the pro day, which I think is worth noting because, again, we saw a lot of guys lose a half inch or a whole inch in the combine measurements because of, whichever scout happened to do it. But at the pro day, you tend to have more friendly measurements. And even there, he winds up with the 32-inch arms, makes me think that's a pretty accurate measurement. So, yeah, just, you're drafting him just for, plug and play, good run defender. But like you said, even that is a little disappointing because he maybe doesn't have the versatility you would like him to have because of that limited arm length.
Yeah, D Bronx, because I wanted to add to this because I think it's interesting. He says, I think Tyleik can play the nose, in my opinion. He's 330 pounds, looks like it, and plays like at that weight. But now I'm interested to go back and check this out. Yeah, I think I wouldn't be shocked if in the NFL he was able to come in and play the nose because I mean I gave the example. You have a DJ Jones of the world, right? And he can play nose. I don't. DJ Jones isn't a typical nose. He's not or like your prototype nose. He isn't your Vince Wilfork, right? But like it's possible that he can, and there's different techniques you can do. I mentioned that knee drop technique to help against double teams. I don't think Tyleik is ever going to be that guy though that gets bounced off a little bit and is able to recover because of his arm length and things like that. It's not that he can't. I think as a scout, you're just looking at it as it's a bigger projection than these other guys with the length. I think it's harder to tell. Like if it was that easy to coach up and that easy to do, I think everyone would be doing it. And I'm not so sure how you project that at the next level, who can versus who can't. That's going to be something that the scouts are going to have to talk to him. And it's like, hey, how coachable is this guy? Can I get him? How moldable? Can I mold him into the type of player I'm looking for him to be? I think the easiest projection for him right now, for me, is he's a run stuffing 3 tech in the NFL. I think he's playing in the gaps. I think he could use his athleticism that way more too. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's a good football player. Like I said, I think he's going to be able to help a rotation. I just question if he's better than the other guys on here. I don't know if I like him more than these other people. But Zach, I think that rounds off our list right there. We're 55 minutes in. Is there anything else you want to hit on before we head out?
Yes. 2 quick things. We're going to start getting position rankings up on letstalkbroncos.com for the Broncos positions of need. I made some sick graphic template today for that. So I'm really excited to get those out. Also finished my wide receiver ranking stack. Maybe we talk about receivers on one of these upcoming shows. So check that out. I'll have wide receiver rankings dropping in the next few days here. I got a top 11, really high on Igbuka, as people know. And then keep your eyes peeled for Joey's. Joey, I asked him to do a defensive line ranking series. I want him to watch TJ Sanders. I see you in the comments there, D Bronx. So Shamar Turner, maybe add some more names to this list, and then write up a defensive tackle ranking for the site. So an even more in-depth look at that coming soon too. So let's talk Broncos.com. We've got a lot of great stuff there.
And I'll do this, D Bronx. I'm going through it. If any of you guys want to talk to us about any of the prospects, hit us up on Twitter. I love talking NFL draft with the guys I've watched with you. Jacob, I feel like he has a nose now for the exact type of player I like at every position. He's like, hey, have you watched this guy? And every time I watch him, I'm like, Jacob, you know me, man. Like, this is beautiful. Thank you for putting me on. And so I love talking draft. If ever you guys want to talk with me, make sure you guys are doing that at LTB_Joey. Zach, make sure you guys are follow Zach already. The GOAT, the greatest media member in Broncos world. This is just a matter of time until everybody gives him his recognition. But
actually, really quick, before we get out of here, thank you to whatever media members voted Let's Talk Broncos the best podcast. If you're listening to this, I appreciate you guys a lot. I assume you are, because we got voted number 1. So thank you. It means a lot to us. And thank you to all the listeners for just supporting us, keeping this dream alive. And we hope to keep it rolling here.
Well, guys, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing to the channel. Till next time, go Broncos.
Go Broncos.